You are now listening to the Dad Rules Podcast with your hosts, Mario E.
Welcome back,
Kid.
everybody, to another episode of the Dad Rules Podcast, where we help you dad better. I'm one of your hosts, Mario E. and Kid. What's going on?
Not much, man. I'm excited about this pod today. We got a guest on here.
Yeah, let's go ahead and introduce him.
All right, we got a good friend of mine, Cam Martin. He's a former Virginia Tech Hokie, and he's going to be talking to us today about fatherhood and his experiences. Welcome to the show, Cam.
Appreciate y'all having me. First and foremost, Kid, you and I go way back. Mario E. Heard a lot about you over the years, so I'm just excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Good deal.
That's what's up?
Well,
all right. So, how about you tell us a little bit of who you are, Cam? Like, if just a little bit more of an introduction than Kid gave. Just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Yeah, man. So I grew up I was born in Danville, grew up in Martinsville, boomerang back around to GW when it was time to go to high school. So that's where my relationship with Tremaine kind of rooted from. I've always kept a very small circle of folks, and he's been one of those folks that's been with me over the years. So, grew up, in the church. My dad's a preacher now. Football and sports was just kind of always at the forefront of my life with my faith. Was blessed to go to college and, play at that level and, end up hurting my knee and weren't able to pursue it any further than that. And I look at that as like, it was a blessing too, because, my life where I sit right now, married, two beautiful daughters. I'm here in Austin, Texas. While I always think about the what ifs or going a different path, I think the path that I was, that God put me on is where I needed to be. So I'm here in Austin right now. We're really excited about making some plans to move back to the East Coast, hopefully this year or next, just to be closer to family. I grew up around family. It's number one in my life. Number two in my life, I have my faith in God. But, having two girls here in Austin, it's a little bit tougher just because you're so far away from the grandparents and your true support system. So excited about that.
Yeah. I can see it being very difficult because, like, even with my son, man, it's like, my dad, they'll pick him up from school, take him to McDonald's, get him a Happy Meal, and it's just they've got that bond, and like you said, with that distance, it's a little bit harder for you to do some of the things that you want to do.
Yeah.
And I know, Mario, you can probably speak to that as well.
And it's definitely adjustment, man. When we moved from Virginia to Arizona, we left behind, all of our family and friends. And, like you said, Cam, that support system is no longer there. But one of the things that I will say that happened with our family is that we got closer. Mm-hmm. We moved as a unit. Wherever it's very rare to see one of us out alone. Unless like one of us is going to work or just grabbing a quick bite to eat somewhere. But I mean, we all go to, if we're going on a trip, we all going, even to this day, my daughter is, a sophomore in college, and she still lives at home, just goes to the university here in our town. And, we travel everywhere together, and people always comment on that. They're like, man, you guys always seem so close knit because we've always been together. When we had to move away from our hometown, it was just us. And we had to, for fun, it was just us. For whatever, it was just us, and it just got us to be a whole lot closer.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I mean, I think moving to Austin was probably the best thing I've ever done in my life because I feel like I grew up, like, even though I was 25 years old, but being dropped into a totally unfamiliar environment, you have to kind of grow up real quick, right? Because you don't know anyone. And so I think you kind of make decisions as if you are an adult. And it's weird saying that at the age of 25 because you think you're grown and you know everything. But I did a lot of learning once I got out here. But you're right, dude. It's like we rarely do anything separately, in terms of being a family. Everywhere I go, my wife's there, my daughter's there. We would love to have our grandparents around, right? So like we can have a date night and go out. But, I think my wife and I obviously need to do that and prioritize doing that on occasion. But like I enjoy going out and bringing the girls with us. Like it's very kid friendly out here. And so it's made us become closer as a family. And weirdly, I do think we even became closer to our extended family back home because I was in Charlotte for a couple of years. You just a drive away. And then but you think about how often you actually do that drive and how often you prioritize that. You
Yeah.
take it for granted. And so even simple things like every dinner, we sit down and we FaceTime with the grandparents. And, we want to make sure that our kids have the same line into the grandparents, even though being that far away, it's difficult. But I'm excited. I'm excited to be able to just jump in the car and go see my mom and dad whenever I want to. So it's something I'm looking forward to for sure.
That's dope. I never really thought about, to keep that connection is like have dinner and have like the computer up and kind of do like a Zoom with them.
Yeah, it's a
That's
balance.
a good strategy.
Yeah, it's a balance. It's a balance for sure. Because like you don't want to, like, you want to have time for you as your family, right? Like talk about your day and my daughter's at school. What'd you learn? Like we do that, but it's also the time where like they actually are sitting stationary and they can actually have a conversation on FaceTime, because putting a 5-year-old, 6-year-old in front of FaceTime is difficult these days. So that's really when they can capture that attention.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And my wife, she does that because she's probably about 3 hours away from where she's originally from.
Yeah.
So her mom, her aunt, they are constantly, FaceTiming each other or whatever. And sometimes like my son, he'll get one of our phones or something like that, and he'll call them and he'll just have conversation. I love that because they keep that relationship.
Yeah.
So even though they're not physically there with each other, they do get that bond with their families. And I think that's important.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure.
Standard question here on the Dad Roots podcast. We want you to tell us, about your relationship with your dad.
Yeah. Oh man, where do I start with that? My dad, so it's funny, like when I was young, we didn't necessarily grow up in the church. Like I remember, I think it was probably like middle of elementary school, where we really like started dedicating our lives and like going to church on a regular basis. And I just remember that being like a different approach, because he always coached, and they always had their coaches meetings on Sundays, and he would take us with us. And like we went to church every now and again, but we weren't really in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do remember, I think I was probably about 3rd or 4th grade when I saw that change in my dad, before he got called into the ministry. And so I would say like dad had a profound impact on my life, because I just remember how, not saying that like growing up in the church is like, I've done everything perfect. But I do think I would probably be a little bit different as a man today if, the first 6-7 years of my life, what I remember is like, every Sunday it was all about football, coaching, watching tape, versus like actually prioritizing being in the church. I do think like I would have probably turned out a little bit different in terms of, my priorities and even how I choose to, raise my own family. But I think my relationship with my dad is like, while we're distant physically, we've never been the type, like my family's just never been the type to just like express emotions outwardly. You know what I mean, Tremaine? You can probably like put those dots together from like even our time growing up. We just don't. I've never really talked about a lot of stuff openly with them. But I think as we get older, as I've gotten older, I think those are conversations that we have a little bit more frequently now. And I learn a lot more about him as an individual and things that he was nervous about, like even being a dad and growing up and, trying to provide for a family and not knowing what to do. So I think one thing that I do take away from my dad is like, he's always prioritized us and making sure that we had stuff, even if he had nothing. And that's really like my approach as a dad right now. It's just like, everyone asks you about what your motivation is and what drives you. And I'm like, as a dad, for me personally, I don't have to look for a motivation. It's like when I come home, like you have a responsibility to your family to provide and to be a good person and put them on a path to success. And, I want to put my family on a path that, I didn't have the opportunities to have when I was younger. And but I did see that my dad worked as hard as he possibly could to make sure that we prioritize being a good person, working hard. And he always said, if you do those things, everything else is going to take care of itself. And those are the two things I've always prioritized, even as, I've gone into my professional career. And it's been true. And so that's really what I'm hoping to instill with, my daughters as they grow up, is that, I want them to look at me the same lens that I look at my dad and say, like, I saw these things and I saw how you really prioritize and how you really put everything to the side to make sure that we had everything. That's what I hope that they see in me when they get older.
It's a funny thing how I hate even saying the word materialistic, but it's so funny how, like, in high school and even sometimes in college, like, we're so concerned about like our image and, you know, what we're wearing and you know, everything needs to be nice and everything needs to be straight, right? But like, as soon as you become a father, it's like, it doesn't matter what I got on. It doesn't. What about you? It doesn't matter about me. If y'all are straight, I'm good. Like, if my kids got the things that they need, that's when I'm the happiest. When my wife is situated, when my son is situated, you know, even getting things ready in the house for the baby that's coming in May. If all her stuff is in place before she gets here, I'm just as happy as I can be. I don't have to have anything.
No, I'm with you. My birthday, we just had this conversation while we were eating lunch a minute ago. Like, they were asking me what I want for my birthday. And like, I can truly say, like, I don't, like, you don't have to give me anything. Like, we can sit down and just freaking cut a slice of cake together. Like, I'm totally cool with that. But I got everything I need. As long as what makes me happy is seeing them happy and that they have everything that they need.
Yeah.
Like, me as a man and as a father, like, you can't buy me nothing that's gonna, like, you know, I wouldn't trade anything for that. Materials, like, nothing. That's the feeling that I strive for, and that's what makes me happy.
I can think about, you know, my birthday was like, you know, a month and a half ago or so, and you know, my wife and kids were like, hey, what do you want? What do you want? You know, Christmas was before that. What do you want for Christmas? What do you want for your birthday? There's a joy and there's a peace knowing that they're happy. You know, and you can't buy it. You can't explain it to people who haven't gone through it. But yeah, it's just, hey, if y'all are good, like Jermaine said, I'm good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. Hey, so let me ask you this, Cam. So you spoke a little bit about your dad, and I wanted to know, you know, a little bit how he shaped you into the person you are. Is there one trait you would say that you got from him being a father that you've definitely carried it on to fatherhood for yourself?
Yeah. That's a good question, man. I think a trait that he instilled in me from a young age was just work ethic. And I think, like, it's a fine line, right? With, you know, like I said, we grew up, didn't have a ton of money. We weren't poor, but we didn't go on a ton of extravagant vacations or anything like that. But he always said, you know, where we grew up, he said, like, as a Black man, people aren't going to expect a lot out of you, right? And so it's like, they're already looking at you. You got to go above and beyond to prove yourself. And I remember, like, that stuck with me as a early, you know, I don't even remember what age he told me that, but that stuck with me. And I never really understood why until I became an adult. I just did it. And I was like, what do you mean? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But I think, like, he always said, keep your mouth shut and work hard. And I think, like, we've learned to balance that. But I think the part of it that I would say that I'm trying to, you know, instill in my daughters is, like, you know, there's a time to keep your mouth shut, but you also need to understand how and when to speak up and advocate for yourself and advocate for what you know is right.
I agree.
And I think that's where, you know, he really instilled in me, like, as we've gotten older, and, you know, even him being called into the ministry, he's also been a very quiet person. If you ever hung around my dad, like, you can literally be in the house with him for 24 hours and you may hear him talk once or twice. Like, he's just a very quiet to himself type of person. So I understand where that comes from and where that roots from. But I think I'm just trying to, like, show my daughters, especially, like, how to speak up, how to advocate for themselves. But you got to learn how to work hard, because, you know, we have been very fortunate, and we, you know, live in a nice house and we make really good money. And so money's never a top of mind thing for her. But I want that not to be the central point of focus, but I also want her to understand, like, it takes work to get to these things. And like, you're never just going to just sit back and it's all just going to fall in your lap. Like, I think it appears to you as a 6-year-old it's happening right now, right? So it's that fine line of like balancing giving them things we never had versus like showing them like it doesn't just happen overnight. You have to work freaking hard to get there.
Yeah.
That's good.
Oh, yeah.
That's good.
So Cam, you're in an interracial relationship, well, marriage.
Yeah.
Did you receive any resistance, to that in the beginning, like from your family or her family or friends or just people that you know?
Honestly, not as much outwardly. But what I do know is I know that there are probably conversations that happen that probably never approaches me, which I feel like I am a very self-aware person. I think for my family, they've always just told me, it was like, I just want you to be happy. Like, whatever that is, I want you to be happy. I do think like on the resistance side, it wasn't like a resistance. I think it was probably more new, like on my wife's side of the family. Because where she grew up, like there's just not, I mean, I'm the first Black guy that she's ever dated, right? And so first Black guy she ever brought home. And so I think it's very different on that side of the spectrum, just because it's not something that they were necessarily used to. They've never been nothing but, nothing short of kind and brought me in open arms. But I think those are conversations that my wife and I have as well, is that, I think the resistance probably comes from the folks that we just they're not in our circles anymore. You know what I mean? So I know that there are people in her circle that she had in the past. I don't see a lot of those people. We don't interact with a lot of those people. I can make a lot of assumptions as to why, but I would say 1000%. I do think it's probably because of the fact that, I am an African American, and, there are things that they've seen and done in the past where it's like, it just may not mesh. Right. And I'm okay with that. And so I think that's where, for me, it doesn't bother me. I haven't been met with a bunch of resistance necessarily, but I do know that it is something that's on people's minds, and whether they choose to say it or not, it's something that we're always very acutely aware of.
Yeah, I think the thing that I like the most is I just want you to be happy.
Yeah,
and I remember having a conversation with you not long ago, and you said that you told your wife, like, I didn't marry you because you were white.
Yeah.
I married you because you were the one for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I feel the same way, because like, if it wasn't for interracial marriages, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
A lot of people wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that, even if you don't know, so.
Oh, for sure.
Bruh, Jermaine.
Yeah.
Jermaine, we 3 light-skinned dudes on this right now. Like, come on, like, what you saying? Like, you're right. We would not be here if it wasn't for
not at all.
So,
it's funny.
yeah.
I never met a white person in my family, but I'm like, look at us.
Right.
It's got to be somewhere.
Yeah, it gotta be.
Yeah. I feel you. But it just,
but
that gave me a different perspective, because I never heard you say that. Because I guess the thing in the African American community is like, yo, he like white girls, he mess with white girls, and you made it clear that wasn't the case. You care to explain that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's definitely the stigma. Like, I think even when you make that choice to marry someone of a different race, like, it's, again, as you get to that step, it's no longer just about you. It's like, how is your life going to change marrying a Black person, right? Like, when, thinking about from my wife's point of view, one day we're going to have kids that are biracial. How do you explain to them, without, totally polluting their minds and pinning them race against race? Is like, how do you plan to raise your kids in that type of environment? And so, yeah, I think from my lens of it, like, I told Tremaine this, like, I never set out to like marry a white girl, and I don't have a preference. I don't follow. And again, I'm kind of I kind of consider myself a very simple person. It's like, if loyalty is number one to me. Like, I feel like if you're loyal to me, I'll drive to Virginia tomorrow. If you told me you had a flat tire and you couldn't get home, I'd pick up and drive tomorrow, and I'd go pick you up. I would. I mean, I would do it in a heartbeat. Like, I'd find loyalty number one over anything when you're thinking about relationships. But I never set out to say, like, if you asked me back in high school, like, we went to GW Danville, like, I never considered it. I went to college right? Like my first year, I was like, man, I'm not dating no white girl, man. Like,
Yeah.
I had relationships with all types of backgrounds and people, black, white, like it didn't matter to me. I think what I value more so is, people that are going to make me better as a person, right? And so that's where, even with my wife, I tell her, I was like, if you had to like write down on paper like what I thought I would end up marrying at some point in time, you're probably the opposite of that. I never thought I'd marry a girl from Emporia, Virginia, that had never really been around a ton of black people before. But I think what really drew me to her was her heart, right? And so like I knew really quickly that it wasn't about like black or white. She's like, if you're a person, I'm going to treat you and I'm going to stand up for what's right. And I saw that even before, like, keep in mind, I knew her before we ever started dating. So I saw how she interacted with other people. So you have that time period where you like see them when there's no skin in the game, right? It's like, I'm not trying to like date her. She's not trying to date me. And I think that really helped me understand like who she was as a person at that point in time. And, like I said, she could have been any color, but one of the things that, the thing that really drew me was, not that she's a white girl. What drew me to her was that she makes me a better person. And Tremaine can attest to that. It's like, I mean, I used to be, I had a temper. I still have a temper, but I have a temper. Like, I like to win. I like to argue. Like, I like to debate. Like, I like to like, I go like, it's not a lot of in between ground. It's like one or the other.
Yeah.
And I realized like, as I got older, like, as I got older, like I have to like evolve myself as a person, right? Because I think, from her lens, I mean, she's one of those people that you can have a debate or an argument or anything with, and 2 minutes later, she's back on track and she's cool. Like she can get over this stuff really quick. I ain't like that. I'm not like that at all. But like as I started to mature as a person, I'm like, if you can do these things, why can't I? It's a choice for me to like act the way I act and do things that I do. And honestly, man, like I think like meeting her changed my life because like I look at things a lot different. I've mellowed out a ton, and I think a lot of it is really like pointed to her and the fact that she's helped me evolve as a person in the way that she has. So it's not about white, it's not about black. Like if she was black, I would marry her too. I've had relationships with all types of backgrounds and women, and it's not about that to me. It's just a matter of like who you are and how you make me feel, and do you make me a better person?
Yeah.
Let me ask you this though, right?
Yeah.
So like y'all dating, first time y'all have a argument or a disagreement and you want to argue and she doesn't.
Bro, it hurt me.
My experience that like when me and Shanika got married, I was the person like, I need to tell you exactly how I feel. You need to tell me how you feel, and we just need to have it out. So we got it all out on the table. And I would be wanting an argument, and she wouldn't do it,
bro.
And that's the thing that's like, at that moment, it's frustrating as I don't know what. But now that I look back at it, that's what I needed. Like when I'm high, you need to be low. When I'm frustrated, you need to be under control and be able to think through. And when you told me about that and that she did that for you, I said, thank God. That's what Cam needed. That's exactly what he needed.
Bro, it's what I needed, man. But I think the scariest part of that is like she is that for me, but I have driven her to the point where like she has like switched that gear. And over the 10 plus years we've been together, I ain't gonna lie, dude, it scared me. And it gets you to that point where it's like if you can make this person who does not want to argue and not want to fight and want to like get to this level, if you can drive her to that level, then you got to look at yourself and figure out like what are you doing wrong. And so like those are the types of scenarios where I was like, you quickly like for me it went from like you want to argue, you want to fight, to like, oh man, like I don't want to lose this woman over my pride because like I want to take this to a point that she doesn't want to take it to. Like I want to get everything out in the clear and I want to talk about it and I want to be, somewhat done with it. But for her, she just processes things differently. And I needed that. I needed someone to balance me out. And again, like there's no stigma around like, does that come from a white woman? Does that come from a black woman? I know the underlying root and all those things is like there's different backgrounds that match for different people. I found the person that matched for me. And again, like I don't think that many people can probably put up with the way that I used to be. And so finding someone that's going to take me through that and like lock arms with me and see me as I grow, like, and I'll jump off a bridge for her at this point. Like that's what you look for in a soulmate, is someone that you can't live without. And hopefully they make you a better person.
Yeah. So let me get a bit deeper. So first of all, have you seen a little bit of that fire in your daughters?
Yes, absolutely. My oldest daughter is my image, like the temper, the attitude, and the hard part with it is when I want to discipline her, I look at her and I'm like, that was me. Like, you're me. Like, you are like, and the other part of me as a dad is like, I don't, there's this thing, right? It's like, there's this thing where you're like, there's certain inherent traits that you pass on to your kids. And like, I think for me, I'm constantly thinking about how do you, I wouldn't necessarily call it a generational curse, but I would say, like, how do you break that? Like, I don't believe that, like, just because I'm this way, my daughter has to be that way, right? And so it's like balancing accepting her for who she is, because she is my child and she has things that, has been passed on to her, but that doesn't have to define her, and that doesn't have to be who she grows up to be. So absolutely, I see it in her. She's a firecracker. I think it's gonna pay off in the long run with her, like, as she goes into an adult. Like, you're not gonna walk over her. And I do think she's gonna push herself really hard, but I don't want that to be like, I want to embrace those good parts about it, but I also want to help her be understanding and aware of, like, how you can impact other people by the way that you act. Because I think that was one of the things that I learned about myself over the years, is that, you do impact people in very different ways, and you need to be very aware of that.
Yeah. Because I feel like that with Jonah sometimes. Like, he's such a good kid, but like when he gets upset, like he has that fire in him. And a lot of times it's just short. It doesn't last long, but I just see that fire in it, and it's like the mad scientist in me is like, you know what? I'm gonna let you do that a little bit because you need that. I don't want to shut you down right now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You need to keep a little bit of that, because you're gonna go through some things in his life, and he's stubborn. But I'm stubborn. Mario will contest. If we're playing, the three of us are playing Monopoly, and he's trying to sell or buy my property or whatever, and I don't like the deal, we'll be there at 12 o'clock midnight until I get it the way I want it to be. If you want to stop playing, we'll stop playing. But Mario, Jonah's just like that. Like, he's stubborn to that point, but I don't feel like it's a negative, because sometimes you need to be stubborn in life. Sometimes it's some things that's going to be presented to you, and you got to be like, no, I'm not going to do that. No, man, come on, man, do this. No, I'm not going to do that. Y'all can stop being my friend or whatever the case is, but I said I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. So I love what you said, Cam, for real, because it's like you see yourself in the kids, and it's like, now it's like, okay, how do I mold this and make this better than I was?
Yeah. It's just harnessing it in a positive way, not to change them. Like, they're kids, man, and like, that's what I like. She's 6, and I forget that sometimes, especially when you have a 8-month-old now. Like, between 6 and 8 months, like, you forget, and you think that they're a lot more mature and they should know, but she's still a kid, man. Like, kindergartners, they're going to do silly stuff, and you got to give them room to be a kid and not treat them like an adult. Because I think when you try to make kids grow up too quickly, I think that's I think that could go a multitude of different ways. Some good, some bad, but I'm trying to embrace her childhood and who she is as a person, like I said, and just harness it in a positive way.
Yep. Yeah, you hit it on the head there, Cam. When you said, harnessing it in a positive way. There's nothing wrong with being angry. It's an emotion that we have that is there for a reason. A lot of times anger can drive you to do, great things, great positive things, And there's nothing wrong with being stubborn either. To me, that's a lot of times we talk about our gut. That's maybe your gut telling you not to do this,
right?
And sometimes we would benefit a lot more if we trust that.
Yeah.
You got something else, Tremaine, on that line?
No, I don't have anything else on it. It was good.
Okay. One of the things that I kind of wanted to ask you about, Cam, was, you know, I don't know how much you watch the news, and I'll be honest, I try to stay away from the news, but sometimes it just comes to our doorstep and different things. But, you know, with so much ignorance and hatred being in the world, and, you know, you talked about, you know, you've been in an interracial marriage or whatever, so your kids are, you know, biracial or whatever. How do you handle that, you know, being in Texas? And, you know, and I'm just, you know, this is just one of those things where, you know, we all have certain stereotypes, but, you know, and I've been to Texas before, but, you know, certain stigmas or come to mind when you think of certain places, the South, Texas, or wherever the case may be. But how is it, you know, talk to us a little bit about, you know, raising biracial daughters, you know, in 2022.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I had like a concrete, solid answer to that. I'd freaking put it in a book and sell it.
We can make some money, man. We can make some money.
I can make some money off of that. But I think, I mean, that's tough. I think the reason why we love Austin is that Austin's kind of like the, it's like a state within Texas. Like outside of Texas, it's a lot more, you know, conservative. Austin's very liberal. They're like, it's a very welcoming place, and that's really why we've stayed here so long, is that it's a place that I would choose to raise my children in. Would I prefer to be a lot more diverse than it is? Absolutely. But I think the mindset here is more around, you know, less about like your color, less about what you do. It's more about like how you treat people. And I would say Austin has probably been one of the most friendly, welcoming places where I don't feel like I go to a restaurant with my wife and I'm being stared at. It's just like no one cares, right? Like there are places back home in the South where like you go and you sit down with a white lady at a table and you can see everyone looking over their shoulders, like trying to see what that's all about. But I think raising our daughters, it's a fine line, man, because what I don't want her to be is this like pro-black, like white people are bad type of thing, right? But I also want her to understand. I also want her to understand like what our grandparents were like. Her grandparents were in segregated schools, and like it wasn't until like I was talking to my daughter about Black History Month, and like I don't know, like I feel so ignorant and even like stopping and even admitting this, but I mean, I was 32, 33 years old before I actually even realized that our parents went to schools like with only Black people, and like it was segregated. We just didn't talk about that stuff a ton. But like when I'm having those conversations with my daughter, it like visibly makes her sad because she's like, I can't believe people would do those types of things. And so like what I don't want is like paint this picture in her head to where like she thinks that every single person is trying to do her wrong based off of what happened in the past. Right. But I also think it's important for her to know that like, you know, she's biracial, but I mean, biracial children back in the day were considered Black. Like, so as a Black woman, which I tell her she's a Black woman, I think that she needs to understand that. And she needs to understand that, you know, she's going to come into situations, whether now or later on down the road, where like people may look at her differently. Like in her class, she's the only person that looks like she looks in her class. Like she's darker than I am, but she's a mixed girl that is surrounded by people that don't look like her. And I think, you know, what really kind of painted a really solid picture in my mind was like they were talking about, I'm thankful that they were even talking about Black History Month at school, because not everyone does that, but they were talking about it. And she was like, it made her sad because for two reasons. She was like, one of the kids said, like Black people like Penelope. And she was like, I wasn't sad because I'm Black. I'm sad because like no one else in my class looked like that. You know what I mean? It was like I felt like I was kind of being singled out. And she's kind of like me in that lens. Like she does not like to be front and center. And so like she was like, it made me kind of feel a little bit like sad and a little bit out of place when I talked to her about it. And then I think secondly, her best friend is a little white girl named Chloe. Like she loves this girl. They live right down the street from us. She comes over here to play. Then Penelope goes over there to play. And she was like, so if we were living back then I wouldn't be able to play with Chloe. And I was like, probably not. And those are the types of conversations where like she's starting to understand that like the world is it can be a cruel place. And I want her to have just enough of that to understand and be aware of that as she like continues to grow. But it's always that fine line of like, you know, I don't want to pollute their minds because she's innocent still. And I don't want her to grow up on one side of the spectrum or the other. I want her to grow up understanding all backgrounds so that that she can adjust and she can like stand up for herself, but more importantly, she can just be aware of that. That's really the big thing. So I haven't figured it out, but I think just having the conversations are really important, and those are things that I will absolutely not shy away from having with her.
Yeah. And that's one of the things too, when you were talking about having that innocence, I think about my son, right? So my son, you know, he's growing up very, very differently than how we grew up in Virginia.
Yes.
Right. And just to, and I'm just try to say this quick as I can, but so growing up in Virginia, and specifically Danville, how I remembered it is, when I'm talking about race, I could go days just going within my own community and my circle of friends without interacting with a whole lot of people who didn't look like me. I mean, because just the way things were, it was not segregated, but, people generally kept to themselves, right?
Yeah.
And, with my son, us, kind of moving around a little bit, it hasn't been a ton of Black people where we've been. So he's had to kind of, maneuver between, all these different races or whatever and stuff. And so for him, his friends are his friends. He's not looking at it like, these are my Black friends, or these are my white friends, these are my Hispanic friends, these are my Asian friends over here. They're just his friends, people who he's, have got the same interests with, And so I just think that's a dope thing that, that there's an innocence there, that I'm not looking at, this certain color of people, and I don't like these people because they're this, and, but it's just, hey, these are my friends because we have the same interests.
Yeah.
I think that's really good.
Yeah, for sure. It's just a lot. It's a lot as a parent that you don't even think about. And just like the awareness, like the books that you buy your kids, right? It's like you go to any random store, they don't look like us. And it's like you need to go out like and intentionally buy books that are representative of their backgrounds. Toys.
Absolutely.
Like you look on the wall right now, and I'm like, they're like, it's actually, I'll give a lot of credit. It's becoming a lot more diverse in terms of what you're seeing. But like when Penelope was a baby, like we would have to order her a Black doll. You know what I mean? Like I want you to see dolls, and I want you to see representation, like just without you even realizing that's what we're doing. It's like we're putting the stuff in front of you to make you understand, like it doesn't have to be this way. And now, I know Kid always jokes me about like Black Santa. It's like I've had those conversations with my daughter too. I'm like, no, if no one's ever seen Santa Claus, how do you know Santa Claus is white, right? It's like because every picture that you see out there is a white man dressed up in a red suit. And so like I don't want those things to just be these things. Even as a kid, you start to accept those things as like facts. You know what I mean? It's like it's facts because that's what people choose to put in front of your face. And I want her to like, it's more about critical thinking. And like I want her to like critically think through those things. So like she's not just, whatever I see is what I will believe. And I think those are the things that I really am doing like on the subconscious level. It's not just being about like Black Santa versus white Santa. It's like I want you to be able to think around these types of scenarios, and I want you to be able to make that determination for yourself once you get old enough to like really like put these pieces together.
Shout out to Black Santa, yo.
It's Black Santa, bro. He ain't going nowhere.
But man, I love this conversation because being in education, I have been the one to tell them about segregation and how things were back in the day. Had a man that came into the school, because the school that I work at, it was actually the Black school in town, and he actually went to that school, and he was telling them how things were different and how he didn't have white teachers, he just had Black teachers. And then when I told the kids about it, it's like they feel like it's the worst thing ever that Black people had to drink at this water fountain and white people had to drink at this water fountain. They think it's the worst thing ever. And I have 2 kids in my class, one's white, one's Black, and they're best friends. So when that conversation was going on, you could just tell it wasn't a lot being said, but you could just tell like they made the connection that we wouldn't be friends.
Yeah.
It's like I said, the innocence of it.
Yeah.
But we have to teach them and let them know, how things were, so we don't repeat this.
Yeah, for sure. 100.
So Mario, you good on that?
Go ahead.
All right. So Cam, you were a D1 athlete. Want to ask you, you know, what connection do you see between sports or coaching and fatherhood?
I think it's I think it's I think it's honestly the biggest one is probably patience. I think my experience as a Division I athlete, it's kind of like you go like high school, you're the man, right? Like everybody wants you to come to their school and play. Like, y'all, kid, you were pretty close to my journey. It's like you go to college. I didn't play a whole lot my first couple of years, stayed hurt. Um, and, kids, nowadays, right? It's like, you have the transfer portal, which is like, I think it's great. Like you can go and play where you want to play.
Right.
And it's like, for me, that wasn't really a big thing back then. And so what it taught me was you have to be patient and you have to continue to work hard because, I think in life, not everything's going to be extremely easy for you. And like, I would say from my lens, going through that experience, and I really haven't talked to a whole lot of people, but like, that was probably one of the most traumatic experiences of my life was in college, right? Because you start off down, you hit this peak like halfway through college where everyone's telling you great. They're talking about where you're going to get drafted and all this and all that. And then you get this injury and you go freaking nosedive. You don't even have a shot to like even play anymore. And like for someone that's 20, 21 years old, having to like re-identify themselves like before they're even like their professional careers get started, like that was like pretty traumatic. And it took me a long time to like really get over that and accept that's just, it's just life. It's just what was meant to be. And now you turn the page and you go figure out how to make the most of it. And so I think that's really what it's been for me in fatherhood, is that like you have to be patient. Like I was telling y'all earlier, it's like my daughter's 8 months here, and she's 8 months, and it's been a long 8-month journey, but it's easy to just throw up and say, look, I'm tired of this. Like I need to walk out for a few hours and all that. But like what it taught me at least was, no, you freaking anchor down. When it gets tough, that's the times you actually anchor down and you push through it. And these are the types of scenarios that actually make you, they make you a stronger person. So I think the patience and the perseverance is really what it taught me in fatherhood, because I mean, you all have kids. Kids can be hard, and they don't teach you and prepare you for life with kids. But I do think with sports, that's really what it taught me in my unique scenario, is that I had to freaking endure some pretty tough stuff early on that I do think it helped mold me. And even in my professional career, kind of combining all those things with being a father, it's like I didn't just start off like freaking kicking butt and everything that I did. It's like it takes work. And I do think one of the things that I've seen, I manage big teams now. And I was like, one of the things that I've seen with people that actually like come out on the top end of this aren't the smartest people in the room always. It's the people that like don't quit when things get down, and they're going to freaking get in your corner and they're going to fight through it. And they're good people, right? And so I think those are the things that it really taught me throughout that, is like, what is your character? Do you show up and you complain? Do you mope around? Do you cry? Is it all about you? Or is it about the team, which my team now is my family. So it doesn't matter if I'm having a bad day. If I come in and I'm freaking bringing my team down, it's like that impacts them and the way that they're able to move forward. So those are the things I think it really taught me. Like, and again, I wasn't until I was later on in my adulthood that I actually stopped and thought about that. But those are the things I think that have helped me navigate the hardness of being a dad right now, because it's not all easy.
Yeah. And man, we had that conversation recently. I mean, it might have been a few months ago. I didn't know it took you that long to get over it. I really didn't. And looking back at it, I guess, you get caught up in living your life and stuff like that. I guess I should have reached out and asked you about that, but I know it's something that you had to go through, but I felt like I wasn't really there like I should have been. And being sensitive to what you were actually going through. I just felt like it was over. Now it's time to get a job. He good. But I didn't think about everything, because exactly like you put it, that's how it was. It was at the top, and then all of a sudden, boom.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
look at what you can teach your daughter from what you went through with
daughters. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, I think, if you had asked me back then, I probably wouldn't have told you. Like I said, it took me a while to like even get comfortable with sharing those things, right? And so
Yeah.
it's just like how we grew up. We didn't talk about a lot of those things. But yeah, man, I mean, it took a while to get over that. And I think it took a while to get over it because of what I was doing it for. By the time I was done playing football, I didn't even like football no more. Like I didn't like it. I was hurt a lot. I didn't like it. I just did it because I was good at it.
Yeah.
But the reason why it was so devastating to me is like how I grew up. We didn't have a lot. And so in my mind, I was like, I want to freaking do this. I want to go make millions of dollars and I want to go build my parents the biggest house that they've ever had. Like I want to go pay off all their debt. I want to go do all these things for
Yeah.
other people. And so like that for me was like freaking devastating when you realize that like, I mean, forget about me. Like, I mean, it doesn't take a lot for me to be happy in my day to day. But the things that I had envisioned and planned in my mind from an early age, like I wasn't able to do that. And so, you know, like I said, I think it took me on a different path. But there are things that I'm able to do now financially and in support of my family that like it took me, you know, it wasn't a straight path. It took me around. But like I feel like the fact that it took me on this avenue to come to Austin and have the opportunity that I've had, I'm now able to do the things that like I was freaking devastated I wasn't able to do 10, 12, 14 years ago. So that's really the underlying behind. It's less about like me wanting to go appear to be an NFL football player and brag to everyone. It's more like what came with that. I wanted to give back and I wanted my family to have something a little bit different than I had.
Yeah. That's good stuff. Mario, you got anything?
Yeah, so I got one more question for you, Cam. So I see you got the girl dad shirt on, you know.
Girl
and
dad?
yeah.
Ooh,
So that came from the whole thing, you know, with Kobe or whatever and stuff. So you being a former athlete or whatever, you know, do you see, I know one of your daughters you said is 8 months old, but your oldest daughter, do you see any type of, you know, desire to want to be in sports or anything? And like how are you going to navigate that, you know, if so?
Bro, she has no interest in sports.
Okay.
She likes dancing, she likes playing with Barbie dolls. Like
Yeah.
she's like not about it right now. But and you know, and so for me, like I think because of how my experience as an athlete, like I could care less if she plays sports, like, but she's gonna do something. It's like so you can't just sit around here and do nothing.
Right.
Like we can learn how to play an instrument. Like we can go and do something. You can learn. I mean, I'm in the software side of the house now. It's like learn how to code and be a software engineer one day. Like they make a lot of money, and you know it's a fulfilling career. They can change the world. So I really don't care. I'm not pushing the envelope on it. She actually came to me yesterday and was like, I think when I go to college, I want to play volleyball. She's just been like, we just hit the ball in the backyard. I'm like, great. Well, if you want to play volleyball, we're gonna have to start practicing. We're gonna have to start working at it. She's actually really good at softball, but she doesn't like to play. She's not competitive like me. She's like on my wife's side. Like they would rather just like all sit around, like be friends. Like she just doesn't have that competitive like drive in her just yet. In certain things, she hates to lose, but she doesn't like to do it in organized sports. So I'm not gonna push it. I'm not gonna push the envelope. But like what I am gonna push is like her finding out what she wants to do. And it may change 50 times between now and when she gets to college. That's fine, but she's going to do something, and I want her to experiment things and just see. I want her to find what that is for her because I don't think she's found that yet.
Yeah,
good.
I think it's funny because like before having my son, it was like, yeah, I'm gonna get him. And I'm gonna get him to play basketball. He's gonna play football. He's gonna play baseball. He's gonna do all this stuff. I'm gonna train with him and all this stuff. And then like when they get here, it's like, man, it'd be cool for you to play. I know what to do to get you there.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if he comes to me and say, Dad, I don't want to do that. Like, I want to swim or something, or I really want to pursue art, or you know, I want to be in the band. I'm like, man, go ahead. Do what make you happy, because I guess, and you were at a higher level than I was, Cam, but it's like when you see all the stuff that you have to go through and how unfair it is a lot of times and everything it takes from you. It gives a lot, but it takes a lot from you. And then, you know, my nephew kind of followed in your footsteps, you know, seeing you play inspired him to want to play Division I, and he was able to do that. And the experience that I gained by going to your games and stuff like that, I was able to help guide him into that direction, because it wasn't the first time I went to a Division I game when I took him, you know? So my experience with you really paved the way for Tim to really come through and do it. And once you see everything that you have to go through, it's like, man, I just want you to be happy, man. I really do.
Yeah, I feel you, man. I mean, it's a grind. Again, like I wouldn't trade it for the world, because I do think it develops you. It develops you to see those things earlier on, and hopefully, if you see it and you take it in, you can start to apply it later on in life, which I'm thankful that I was able to. But it becomes a business at a certain point, and you have to understand that. You have to be okay with that. So it's one of those things where, I guess, like you said, I could take it or leave it. You know, if she wants to play in college or in high school or whatever that is, it's fine. It would be amazing. It'd be cool. I would love to go and support, but I don't really care if it's like, as long as it's something that's making her better as a person and progressing her, and she's not just sitting around the house playing with Barbie dolls when she's like 18 years old. I'm totally fine with it. I'm gonna support you, whatever you want to do.
You got to do something. I think we all can agree on that.
For sure.
Have a passion in something.
Yeah. Because I tried to get my son to play football, but he wants no part of football.
Yeah.
Like none.
I still think he could be a good cornerback. I really do.
He's quick, but like I said, anything having to do with like wrestling or anything having to do with like a contact sport, he wants no part of it. And I'm okay with that. You know, I'm okay with that now. You know, at first I wanted him to do all that, but you know, he likes track or whatever. Get out there and run and do high jump, long jump, and all those different things. But you know, as far as contact sports, he ain't with it.
So
that's what's up. But if that's it, we'd like to thank you guys for listening to Dad Roots podcast.
Thanks to Cam for joining us today.
Thanks for having me,
being our guest. And guys, we want you to like, share, subscribe. We want to get this conversation out there. This is a conversation that definitely needs to be heard. Cam, you brought a lot to the table today. We really appreciate you coming on. And we'll catch you guys next time. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Dad Rules podcast with your hosts, Mario E. and Kid. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, follow and like us on Facebook and Instagram. You can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Breaker, and Player FM. Till next time.